Hey guys, um, welcome to the next video in our SQL Server playlist and T-SQL tutorial. So today we will be looking at stored procedures in SQL Server or T-SQL, depending on how you refer to it. So what are stored procedures, you may ask? Basically, stored procedures are a group of SQL statements that are created and then stored in the database for later use, that could be repeated use. And stored procedures can accept input parameters, and we will be looking at how to do that later on in the video. Therefore, a single stored procedure can be used by multiple users connected to the same database, and with parameters they can all be accessing different data using the same stored procedure. So we mainly use stored procedures because it reduces the need to rewrite code, and it helps sort of modularize the querying of data. But also it's important to note that stored procedures help to reduce network traffic and also improve the performance of the database overall. Stored procedures can also be modified and deleted, but it's important to remember that these operations will be applied to everyone who is connected to the database. So if you delete a stored procedure, nobody connected to that database can access it anymore. So we will look at deleting stored procedures at the end of the video, so stick around for that. So let's dive into just the syntax of creating stored procedures. So as you can see here, it's quite simple to create a stored procedure, and these are created and used in two parts. We have first the creation of the procedure, and the second part, which is the execution of the procedure. So to create a stored procedure, you just write create procedure and then give it a name, and these names usually have a syntax that whatever organization that you're working with would require you to follow. But if you don't have it, you can just name it anything that follows the same parameters as tables in SQL. So you write create procedure and then you give a procedure name. Below that you write as, and then you specify the SQL statement that you want stored in the stored procedure, and below that you write a go, and there should be no exclamation mark, which is an important thing to remember. So that's how you create a stored procedure. So when you run this, the stored procedure that you've created will get saved in the database. And now when you want to execute a stored procedure, you just write exec and you specify the procedure name that you want to run. So let's just dive into the demo so that it becomes more clear for you. And along with that, I'll show you how we set up our environment to work. So I'm using Azure Data Studio because I'm on a Mac. If you're on a Windows, you can use SQL Server Management Studio. I've got installation guides to both, and you can check them out at the link in the top right corner of the screen or description. Apart from that, I've also linked to a GitHub repository with two files. One holds the sample data that I'll be using for this demo, and one will have the exact queries or stored procedures that I'm creating and executing, so you can copy along, so you can follow along with the demo. So you can access that at GitHub, and the link will be in the description. So now let's get started with the demo. So I have this table called students, which is what we'll be working on. And now to create a basic procedure, as I told you, you write create procedure and give it a name. So I'm just going to call it sp call students, because stored procedures are usually given the name starting with sp for stored procedure, and then we do the as, and then we specify the query that we want to save. So suppose I just want to call all the data. I'll just give it a select star from students, and then we write go. So now if I run just this, we can see commands completed successfully. And if we go to the files tab under our database, there's this tab which you can see, which is called programmability. Under that we would have stored procedures, and if we just refresh that, you can see that we've got this sp call students created here. And now to run it, like I told you, you can give it an exec and then specify exec sp call students, which is the name we had supplied to the stored procedure. So now when you run this, you get this table returned completely. So that is basically how we use simple stored procedures. I had used a very simple query inside the stored procedure, but you can make it quite complex, and also merge multiple stored procedures as long as they are logically sound. And now let's look at how we can use parameters within our stored procedures. So let me just pull up a slide with the syntax of stored procedures. So first let's look at how we use stored procedures with just one parameter. And as you can see, the syntax is pretty similar. It's just that when we write create procedure and then give it a procedure name, after that we have to specify a variable name that is preceded by a @ operator and followed by the data type. So that could be nvarchar, integers, varchars, dates, whatever, but you need to specify the data type of that integer that you're specifying with the @ operator. Then we write as, and then we specify the query as we did previously, but we have to use that parameter that we had specified within this query that we are writing down. So we want to in this statement we're basically filtering by city, and we want to dynamically pass the city name using a parameter. So to do that, the query that we would write is select star from customers or students in this case, where city is equal to @city, and this @city will be changed by the data that we input as we are executing the stored procedure. And then you just write the go as we had done previously as well. So now once you execute with the go, your stored procedure will be saved, and then when the time comes to run, you just need to write exec stored procedure name and the variable with the @ before that, and then you give a equals to sign and specify the data that you want passed with the parameter. So it'll become more clear to you when we look at the demo. So let's create a stored procedure with one parameter. So how we would begin again is create procedure sp call students underscore gender. So I want to dynamically pass the gender of the students that we want returned. So to do that, I can create a gender variable. So I'll write @gender, and as you can see in the table, gender is of the varchar type or string type. So you can specify the particular data type, and the length I'm just giving 30 because just to be safe. And we give the as operator. Then we write the query, which is basically the simple select star from students. And here's the important part. You do gender equal to the variable that we had specified above, @gender, and then we can just write go. So now when we run this, that we can see that commands completed successfully. If we refresh this, you see that we get the next stored procedure also saved and created in the database. And now when we run, this is the important part, you can run sp call students gender, and then you specify @gender equal to, suppose you wanted to do male first. Remember to match your case with the case in the table. So now when we run this, when we run the stored procedure with a dynamically passed gender male in this case, we get all the males returned from the table, and we didn't have to write a big query with the where statement filtering the data and stuff. So now suppose it was female that we wanted to return, we just need to change the parameter data passed and run the query again, and now we get the female table. So you can see the benefits already of using stored procedures. Obviously this was just a small statement that we were querying, but you can start to imagine when we start using larger queries what kind of time saving using parameters with stored procedures would be offering. So now let's just quickly look at how to use stored procedures with multiple parameters. Again, very similar to using them with one parameters. It's just that when you create the variables and the data type, after each variable and data type that you create, you can add a comma and specify the next one. And inside the the query that we are writing inside the stored procedure. You just need to specify both or however many parameters we are creating in the create procedure line. We have to use all those parameters in the query that we are writing. And you create the stored procedure, and when you're executing, you need to specify again both the variables you've created and pass along the data that you want, and separate this with a comma. So suppose we just dive into a demo to make this clear for you. We can do create procedure sp call students, and we want to filter by gender and age. So we can do gender underscore age at gender. So suppose in this case I want to filter by gender and age, so I'll specify gender, and then I put a comma and specify the next variable. So this is at the rate age. Age will be of the type integer because it's a number, and after that we do as select star from students, sorry, typo, where gender equals to at the rate gender, and age, in this case I want people older than the age I specify, so we can do and age greater than the variable we passed in, which is at the rate age, and then we write a go, and then we can create this stored procedure. So command completed successfully, refresh, and you can see that the new stored procedure has been created in the database. And now to execute this, just write exec sp call students gender age. My naming is pretty bad, so don't take any cues from me on that front, but we write at gender, pass the gender that we want. So we want females who are older than 30, and so we can put a comma and specify the next variable and pass the data type. So notice that when we pass numbers and not strings, we don't need the single quotes, which is pretty much standard practice throughout SQL and most programming languages. So once that's been written down, we can run the stored procedure, and as you can see, we've got all females and all who are above the age of 30. So that is how we use multiple parameters with stored procedures. And now finally, let's look at how we can delete these stored procedures that we've created, because obviously they're taking up memory in the database, right? So to do that, we just need a drop, where for tables we did drop table and then table name. For stored procedures, we do drop procedure name. So sp call students, and then we do a go. So run this, commands completed successfully. For the next one, I'll just be lazy and modify the same statement again and again. So the second procedure has been deleted, and finally for the third procedure, we'll delete that as well. We run that, and now when I refresh this, you can see we've lost all those sp call student stored procedures, and I just have something I've created earlier. So that's a little bit about stored procedures, and then stored procedures with single and multiple parameters, and also about deleting stored procedures. Thank you guys for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe, comment, share, and hit the bell icon. I'll see you in the next one.